Welcome back to Kanell and Bell on this Wednesday. Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota were drafted number 1 and number 2 in 2015. I liked them both coming out. I thought both of them had a chance to be successful quarterbacks in the NFL. Had some reservations. I didn't think they were locks the way you would put Andrew Luck in that conversation. Even then, I mean, he's a guy who's not playing anymore, but he did have a lot of success. But I did not see this outcome coming, where they're both in their final years of their rookie contracts and both of them really hanging on to their careers like by a thread. Jameis Winston coming off a brutal game in London where he had 5 interceptions and lost a fumble. Marcus Mariota's coming off a game in which he actually did get benched. But Jameis in his last game, he said 5 interceptions plus a fumble, so he had 6 turnovers. You also heard after the game, Bruce Arians said, and you could see the frustration on his face, and there was a bunch of memes about him during the game as he was just looking on in frustration. Jameis's mistake has always been he tries to do too much. Like He tries to be the hero. If everything, it's like all this, the plays breaking down, like he fumbles the snap, just take a sack, or throw it away. Instead, he'll like break 2 tackles, come up, and he'll wing it down the field, and it gets picked off. If he could just get rid of those, he'd be really good. The problem is 5 years into the NFL, he still does the same things. And that was Bruce Arians, was his criticism for him after the game. It's so frustrating.
It's really frustrating. I feel like you said their careers, that their starting careers are certainly in jeopardy, right?
Yes.
Like their starting careers as NFL quarterbacks. I feel like Jameis Winston ceiling is high, like starting quarterback level potential. I don't know him, but when you're making those same mistakes, I don't know if this is cool or not, but you can't be that bright. When you're still doing the same stuff, that gives me pause.
Right.
That's going to lower your ceiling, right? When you're still doing that, and I can take you to 3 years worth of film and be like, okay, right here on the play that Danny just described, take the sack. And you come out there 2 weeks later and you don't take the sack. I have to now be concerned about like whether you're putting 2 and 2 together.
Right. And when you throw 5 picks, they're not all going to be on you. And there was one that hit the receiver around here and it popped up, but there were a couple scrambled around, tries to heave it in the end zone, and it gets picked. And there's a lot of research that's been done that really all you need to see is 3 years of a quarterback starting games, and it's kind of going to be like you should see progression, and then you kind of know what you're going to get.
Right.
When you've got 5 years of film and you still don't elevate and start getting better and eliminating those mistakes, then you have a problem.
But I could see why, because you see the potential there, you might be tantalized or tempted to like take another swing at that. Marcus Mariota, on the other hand, I just don't think the ceiling's that high for him. Like it doesn't look the same, right? It's not about the silly mistakes. It's about like it's never really looked great.
Right.
Like it doesn't look like you have the potential to be a high level starter. And when you're replacing him with Ryan Tannehill, like we've been in the market. So you know where Ryan Tannehill is and isn't. You know what I mean? And so I think that speaks volumes. So while it's the fate is kind of the same, they seem like 2 different animals in terms of what you're looking at.
They're definitely different. I think Marcus Mariota is a little too cautious.
Right.
Like I think he could open up the game plan a little bit.
Take
risk. A little bit more chances down the field because he does a little bit of a check down Charlie, if you will.
Right.
You mentioned Ryan Tannehill replacing. I think they're the same quarterback.
Correct.
You know, like I think they're. And there's been some stats from the last couple of years where they're virtually identical. This is just, to me, you're moving on. They traded for Ryan Tannehill. They want to find out, hey, maybe we give him a change of scenery. Maybe he catches on, gets hot. Both the quarterbacks, both of them, though, and this is where it's a shame. You wonder what they would have done if they were in good situations, because they've really been in bad situations. A lot of times, that determines your fate as a quarterback. And that's why, I'm worried about Kyler Murray or Josh Rosen's a good example. Like he was handed a bad situation in Arizona, goes to a worse situation in Miami, and it's probably going to determine, it's going to severely impact his career in a negative way. He's going to have a long way to come back from after that. Would you, if you're a team next year, let's say the Dolphins, I don't know, let's say the Dolphins decide Tua's not our guy, would you take a swing at Marcus or Jameis?
No.
I don't know. I don't think I would either. I think you'd want to be in a stable situation where maybe You bring him in to compete for a job, but I don't think you're going to hand him a starting salary contract. You're going to bring him in a position to compete.
I was racking my brain to see if there was anybody that would view one of those guys as a potential starter for them. I don't know who it would be next year. Just off the top. I couldn't.
Like I was going to say the Bears. Like I think Marcus Mariota would fit what the Bears are doing pretty well, but they're not going to move on from Mitchell Trubisky yet because Trubisky I think is a liability. I think Marcus would be the perfect like, hey, I'm going to manage the game. We got an incredible defense. I can make some throws. They're asking Trubisky to do some stuff with his legs. Marcus could do that, and I think he'd be a smarter quarterback than Mitchell Trubisky.
Right.
But I don't think the Bears would go for Jameis Winston.
It's tough. You know the Jameis thing is, and I don't mean to, but like at Florida State. Right. You know, with all of this stuff, right? Whether you were, you just had to, at some point you started questioning like his judgment. Do you remember, like, some of it wasn't his fault necessarily, or he was exonerated, or whatever the case may be. But then there was something else.
Yes.
Right. And then you'd be like, oh, you escaped by the skin of your teeth there, but then you were stealing crab legs.
Right.
And then you're like, oh my God, dude, what are you doing? Right. Like,
I've always described Jameis. They say, what do you like about him as a quarterback? What do you don't like? And I've always said, and it's kind of exactly what you're referencing. His decision making.
Yeah.
Both on and off the field comes into question.
Concerning,
and it's for different reasons, but for whatever reason, he can't.
Oh, but
there's a foolish decision
that is
in
a
there.
decision-making position. Like,
yes.
You have to be able to make
Exactly. And I root for both of them, but I do think they're going to find themselves in a really awkward position.
Right.
Joey said, what about the Cincinnati Bengals, who, moving on from Andy Dalton, I think Marcus Mariota would be just a slightly better version of Andy Dalton. I don't think they would see that as the future. I think their quarterback of the future might be on their roster in Ryan Finley, the quarterback from NC State, who they got in the 4th round.
Yeah.
I think he might be a cheaper option at Andy Dalton as opposed to going out and finding somebody like that.